Welcome to Beyond Six Figures, the podcast that helps business coaches to micro-niche, get noticed, and become fully booked. Learn from top industry leaders who've successfully taken their businesses and their lives beyond six figures. Get ready to level up your coaching business and make this world a better place, one business at a time. And now, here's your host, Ziv Raviv.
Hello, and welcome to Beyond Six Figures. What happens when your business hits a plateau and growth feels impossible? That's exactly where Ryan Kauth comes in. As a fractional executive, podcast host, and long-time business coach, Ryan has spent 25 plus years helping leaders break through barriers and scale with purpose. He founded the Entrepreneurship Program at the University of Wisconsin-Green Bay and continues to empower founders worldwide. Today, he's here with us to share his wisdom on unlocking growth, building great teams, and leading like a visionary. Hello, Ryan. How are you?
Hello, Ziv. Thanks for having me today. I'm great.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. And you've had your years of working with business owners. And today I want to pick your brain specifically with business coaches. You're a business coach yourself, but you've been helping others as well in their journey to become business coaches or to switch their career into business coaches. So first, I want to just ask you, who do you think should consider becoming a business coach?
So the wide answer is anybody that has a specific expertise and enjoys teaching others and is also very patient with other people. So you might have had an experience when you were in business, coaching other team members, mentoring other team members. And quite frankly, that was one of the things that got you out of bed and got you going to work and really kind of made you enthusiastic about showing up at work, is pouring into kind of that next generation. Or I like to think of it as, if you have the patience to work with a new college graduate or somebody very new in the workforce, and you're okay walking them through as a mentor and kind of as a teacher, I think you'd make a pretty good business coach, quite frankly.
And when is it that you would consider yourself a fractional executive? Because you actually chose to focus on that, on the border of that realm.
Yeah, I mean, I look at fractional executives as permanent part-time members of the executive team. I know some people talk about interim roles and doing projects and doing consulting. And quite frankly, I've done all those things. But what I enjoy the most is coaching serial founders and family business owners. And then when the occasion is right, jumping in and being a part-time executive on a team.
What does that require from you?
That's a good question too. Generally speaking, for me, if I'm going to jump into a fractional executive role, it has to be the right situation where we culturally agree on what is the purpose of this business in the first place. It's just like when I would take on a business coaching client or I decide not to, is there has to be a good fit there. I have to be able to be confident that I can help this individual, just like I have to be confident that I could help this business owner and be part of their team. They're going to have part-time members of their executive team. They're going to have full-time members of their executive team. And I have to be sure that the full-time members of the executive team are okay with me being part-time. That's one thing. And then the other thing is, do I work well with this group? And sometimes I will come in as a business coach and talk to the group or talk to the team. And if I have a pretty good feel that I kind of belong on this team or I can add value to the team, then I would consider that fractional role.
In the world of fractional executive roles, there are different roles that you might step into. You might be a fractional CMO, you might be a fractional CFO, and you might even be a fractional COO. So like marketing, finances, operations. What type of fractional executive do you like to be assigned to?
Yeah. I typically do fractional chief business development officer roles, as well as, and I know this one is completely different, but fractional nonprofit executive director roles. And both of those roles tend to be one, when that organization doesn't have the funding or really can't afford a full-time chief business development officer or full-time executive director of that nonprofit. But also there's a plan for potentially hiring a full-time person, which would not be me, but there's almost kind of an interim piece. So I don't like to talk about that interim piece when I talk about fractional executive roles, because again, I believe that a fractional executive should be a permanent part-time executive team member. But I typically take on more interim roles where there's an understanding that I'm going to replace myself at some point.
I'm curious about the idea of a biz dev, a chief of business development that is fractional. And specifically, I understand the fractional part, of course. Like sometimes you don't need a full-time biz dev, the business is not there or can't afford it and so on. But what I'm curious about is actually there's a lot of work to be done in biz dev. You need to find who to meet. You need to connect with them. You need to nurture the relationship into a meeting. You need to try and create a relationship, a partnerships of sorts, so that the business will develop and so on. So that sometimes requires either a lot of hours of work or a team. How do you overcome that problem?
Yeah, I mean, the team is the key, as you said. So when I'm doing fractional chief business development officer work, I'm working with the sales team. I'm working with the CEO, typically the owner, the founder of the company. And yes, we're doing exactly what you're talking about. We're trying to figure out what are some partnerships that might work. So I would be meeting with those potential partners. I would also be doing sales. I like to get all the way down in the weeds and understand what the typical day-to-day is like for that salesperson. And then I'm also typically meeting with the chief marketing officer or CRO to understand what their challenges are as well and blending that all together. So yeah, it does take up an additional hours, but it doesn't take up 40, like me being a full-time. Typically when I'm doing my fractional chief business development officer roles, I'm doing something in the 15, 20 hours a week.
So usually your coaching clients are not requiring that many hours.
No.
And that's, I guess, is like one of the reasons you go for a fractional role is because you're also busy with your other clients. So tell us a little bit about what type of clients you like best.
Yeah, I mean, my niche is I work with serial founders. So founders who are on their third, fourth, fifth business and are hitting these valleys that they've never hit before. They're trying to build businesses like they have before. They're typically in a different industry. So the example I like to use is maybe there's a tech startup founder who's launched a tech startup, maybe a second one, and now they're in a service industry that deals a lot more with people than it did before. And it's just not working out for them. So again, they've hit this valley where things are not going well. And I would even say worse than not going well. I also work with family business owners, and I'm typically working with founders with adult children in the business who they certainly want to own it someday. And there's that understanding there. But I also have worked with multi-generational family businesses. So say like the third generation with the fourth and fifth in the business and things like that. So industry-wise, pretty agnostic. I've worked in a lot of different industries, but it's typically the dynamics that I typically work with. And I'm working with business owners who are in those really bad valleys. Maybe not the frustrating plateaus, but maybe worse.
So I want to touch on the family business part of things because you've acquired quite an experience of helping entrepreneurs that involve family members in their business. I also noticed that with some of my clients that are in the same position where some of the decisions they make are not business decisions. or
Right.
they are business decisions, but they need to take into account their family members' aspirations, preferences, and feelings. And sometimes the end result is that there's a committee running the business or the decision making. What are your top tools or some tips that are that you constantly need to kind of remind your clients about when it comes to working with family members and getting to these points that decisions to be made?
Yeah, you alluded to committees running businesses, family businesses, and things like that. So the number one thing you can do is have a structure in place, but the structure is not enough. You have to constantly be communicating why the structure is in place and how the structure actually works. So you might have, again, let's use founders with a second generation of older adults and maybe some younger adults, third generation coming in. Those third generation folks have no idea why this structure is in place at all. So having them understand why it's there and what it actually is really important, because part of that structure really is to put into place harmony among the family. There's one thing, you're working together, but there's another thing when you're done working together, how do you then get along and try not to talk about work, right? So you can actually relax and have family dynamics, not family business dynamics when you're not at work. So that's number one. Number two, and this is kind of the big secret that I'm very happy to give away. You don't focus in family business on the next generation. You focus on the one after that. So the idea is what you need to do is don't concentrate on your kids. You concentrate on your grandkids and having a business for the grandkids. And that's where you might not make a pure business decision with some of those things, right? Or it's the opposite. You're very emotionally attuned to how people are doing in the family business, and you might have to make a business decision so that you know that business is going to be there for your grandkids. And there's two ways to do that, and I'll talk about one of them. The number one way that you can focus on not this next generation, but the one after that is through philanthropy. In most family businesses, everyone is donating, making donations, volunteering in certain ways. But if you want to get the family together, working toward a family business for the grandkids, start doing philanthropy together and bring the grandkids in on those decisions.
Can you give us some examples?
Yeah, that gives them practice to make business decisions. So the thing with family businesses is there are very few ways to say, go to college and learn about family business, right? There are some, but there are not very many. And so really those next generation of family business owners have to learn on the job. And so an example would be founding couple volunteers at this nonprofit and maybe make some donations to another nonprofit, right? You've got adult kids in the business. They're doing the same thing. But what would happen if you all got together and decided, and by the way, this takes a lot of time, but what if you decided that as a family, we are going to volunteer for this organization and we are going to make philanthropic donations to this organization together? That doesn't mean you stop volunteering and making donations for the stuff that you are doing now, but let's get the family together and do this together. So it often becomes part of your brand as a family business, not just as a leader in your family business or an owner in the family business, but what does the family business do together philanthropically?
I think I see what you're doing here, and it's very subtle and very, very deep. You're empowering the business owners and partners of sorts, the family, to actually look at their business as something bigger than what it is, bigger than their own opinions and their kids' opinions and the conflict that rises when they talk about how to do stuff. There's something else, for example, the legacy of the grandchildren or the children of the grandchildren and so on, the legacy of the next generation forces them and empowers them to make a decision that is actually just business-wise decision.
Mm-hmm.
And the
Right.
same thing happens when they come together and they have a philanthropy cause. If you are all in agreement that you want to support a specific cause and you're happy about it, then that money donation actually becomes something that if you all came together behind this cause and you want to maybe even grow it over time, you
Right.
might as well build a business that grows so that you could continue to support that cause even further.
Exactly. And that leads to different things, right? That could lead to establishing a family foundation that a fourth generation person runs. So, I mean, there's lots of, you're correct on the subtlety. The other part of that is it gives teaching moments. So, okay, we're going to do this as a family. Let's do a strategic plan that says, all right, how much profit are we going to make this year? How much of that are we going to donate? What happens if we don't have those funds? And so now you've got teaching moments about your income statement, your profit loss statement. You've got teaching moments about your balance sheet. And so those are some really good ways to get that younger generation starting to understand how the business actually works.
I hear my client's voice in my head telling me, Ziv, that sounds really fun and important to donate time and money into one cause altogether. It will bring us together. But also a Disney vacation will bring us together.
Yes.
And we need to make more money. And so can you help us make more money now so that maybe in the future we will focus on philanthropy? What would you do in that type of situation?
Yeah, in that situation, I would say the family vacation, go, a week to Disney, something like that. I would say that's a priority over philanthropy because that's something that you need to do on an annual basis is have some kind of family gathering where all the families, all the owners can get together and not talk business at all, have a picnic, go on a vacation, whatever that is. I would say in most cases, I've recommended do that first before the philanthropy piece. That's actually part of your family business structure of having that annual vacation or that annual picnic or that annual weekend at the lake, whatever that is.
So what I hear also in the mindset is that just like we need structure on the roles in the business, especially in a family business, in order to communicate between the different generations, in order to actually make business decisions that are sound, we also need structure and communication on some other things like the family vacation or like the philanthropy cause or like the values of the business.
Right.
So what are some other things that are important discussions to make in a family business so that people don't actually kill each other at some point because there's always a lot of emotions as well.
Yeah, the number one thing I hear from founders of family businesses is they are disappointed when they realize or they're told that their adult children in the business, this is Gen 2 now, are not going to operate the business like they did. And that's an interesting discussion because in one sense, in my head, I'm saying, of course they don't, because they saw how you did it and they missed out on time with you as you were building your business, perhaps. And they don't want to do it that way, right? But now they've got grandkids. So that's where I bring the grandkids back into that conversation. And yes, those founders might be disappointed in their adult children. But again, focusing on the grandkids is how you have those founders be better with transitioning ownership to a generation that is not going to do it like they did.
What do you do when they don't want the grandchildren to be a part of it? Maybe they're too young to make that decision. Is that still a tool that they need to use, even if the grandchildren didn't really decide yet?
Right. And that's one of those conversations where you say, okay, it doesn't necessarily mean that the grandkids need to automatically be part of the business, but you have that structure. So for example, did you want your children to go and get a degree and go work somewhere else before you came into the family business? Sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes they only want them to come into the business. So create internships for those grandkids. Have the grandkids come in and sweep the floors. Way back in my coaching journey, when I started, my first paying client was the general manager of a company who was buying it from the owner. And the big issue was, how do I own this company and have family time? And one of the things we talked about was, all right, you've got young kids, have them come in and sweep the floor, have them come in and stock the shelf, right? So they understand that they can be at work with you and hear what you're doing at work. It's almost like a permanent bring your daughter to work situation. And that can help you build that quality work life that you want.
So one of the conflicts that exists in a family business, is hiring additional team members that will not be from the family. And how will that be impacting the dynamic in the family? What are some advice you help business owners when it comes to hiring non-family members?
Yeah, cultural fit is key. So what kind of culture is your business right now? There are going to be some people that want to work for a family business because they like that family atmosphere. There are going to be some executives especially that you are not going to want to hire because they think that they are going to be able to move into a specific role that maybe only you want family members in. But you also have to be open to having family members be in the business, work in the business, but maybe they're not in the role that you thought they would be in. So for example, maybe you really wanted your daughter to go and get a degree in accounting because you need an accountant. You're having a hard time trusting an accountant. But if they're a family member, I would trust them better. Well, maybe your daughter doesn't want to be an accountant. Maybe your daughter is much better at sales or much better at marketing or much better at operations. And so being open to who is going to fill different roles is really important. And then when you're filling those roles, talk about your company culture. Make sure your company culture is a fit for that individual. And you're going to have to talk to, especially leadership roles, about what it's like to work in a family business and essentially not being able to be promoted because that particular role is being saved for a family member.
So it's all about communication and transparency.
Yeah.
You have to take it in both ways. The candidate needs to know what is their future. And at the same time, the family needs to be okay with the hire. So it does require more handling, more communication.
I agree.
But sometimes there's no way around it. I want to transition into talking about your business because your expertise is something that is a little bit hard to find, like micro niching into talking, like helping business owners that are in a family business. But at the same time, it makes it harder for you in acquiring leads in marketing because actually there aren't a lot of places where you can go, oh, all the people that are family members, they always read this magazine or they always go to this Facebook group. I don't know, maybe there is a Facebook group for this type of specific family member businesses, but it's not easy to advertise and it's not easy. There's no like category on Facebook where, check if the kid is also in the business. So how do you make sure that people know about you?
Yeah, I think number one, it starts with your personal professional network and understanding those advisors to business owners or those advisors to your coaching clients. That would be number one, because those advisors to whoever coaches or whoever your coaching clients are will know some of the problems that you solve for those particular clients. So that would be number one. Number two is talk about what you do and talk about who you help and give a little education away. So I call that thought leadership, right? So maybe you are posting on LinkedIn, maybe you have a LinkedIn newsletter, maybe you have an email newsletter. And yeah, when you're starting out, you're not going to have very many followers. But again, as things progress, you will. And you'll find a following who does understand your niche. You certainly are going to have to wade through those who don't understand your niche or never will. And that's okay, because my niche being serial founders and family business owners, like you said, that's a pretty micro niche, right? But I know where my clients typically go. I even recommend to my clients, here are some peer groups you might want to check out. Here are some conferences that you might want to check out. And guess what? I'm typically at those conferences.
So I hear you. So your solution for your own marketing need is that you know those conferences where the serial entrepreneurs will go to.
Right.
And you show up and you make connections. And in the case of the family businesses, are there some places that people go to where they congregate, where you can show up?
Yeah, there's family business conferences. There are, again, some family business programs. So, for example, I used to facilitate a 6-week executive education course through Columbia Business School and their executive education. And it was called Family Enterprise and Wealth, where it just introduced family business owners to the structures that you need to put in place and things like that. So essentially kind of getting hired to do those things, or speaking at a conference, tabling at a conference, or just going to the conference and networking to meet other folks who serve your niche is really important.
Ryan Kauth, this has been a delight to look into some of the mindsets, shifts, and tools that helps family business owners, business owners that run the business with their family, and help them look at their business in a totally different way and empower them with the decision making. And you seem to be in a good place now that you don't need to work hard on marketing. You know where your potential clients are already congregating and where you can just show up and be a part of their ecosystem in a way. Where can people go to learn more about your work and connect with you?
Yeah, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. That's probably the best place to find me that way. I don't want people thinking that at some point you can stop doing marketing and thought leadership and business development, things like that. In fact, I think sometimes when I'm the busiest with my clients, I'm probably the busiest doing marketing as well. So for example, right now I'm redoing my website, right? But LinkedIn is the best place to find me. And I'm pretty free at giving you my virtual appointment calendar if there's something you want to talk about.
We will put into the show notes of today's episode the links for that, for the scheduling of a tool and for LinkedIn and for the site. And we all redo our website every now and every a few years or so. It's completely normal. Ryan, this is so great to connect with you. It's such a great experience to see workers and how they think and some of their tools. Thank you for sharing this with us. And you already got me worked up with the ideas of how to become a better coach to my clients. So I appreciate that personally and in behalf of our audience. Thank you for being here.
That's awesome. Thanks for having me. I love this podcast. Love the guests that you've had on here. They're people's podcasts I listen to already. It's been great. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening for another episode of Beyond Six Figures. See you next week.
Thanks for listening to Beyond Six Figures. Check out the extended show notes that include bonus material, practical tips, and exclusive resources on our website, zivraviv.com. Until next time, keep dreaming big and pushing your business and your life beyond six figures.